Good morning, friends. Thank you for joining me again today. Let's begin with a prayer, and then we'll jump into our piece of music for today, which is an incredibly beautiful and deeply poignant piece of music from Swami Kriyananda titled, Why? So let's begin with our prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, dearest friend, beloved God, great Masters, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, and our friend Swami Kriyananda, we lay the flowers of our gratitude and our love sincerely at your feet. Receive us. Guide our hearts and our understanding. Help us to uplift and direct our heart's feelings ever more single-pointedly towards Thee. Help us to offer to Thee all of our questions, all of our yearnings, all of the deepest griefs of our heart, until at last we too discover why. Until at last we discover all the answers that we crave in your love, in your presence. Om, peace. Amen. So this morning, like I said, we'll be jumping into Swami's piece of music entitled Why, which gives all sorts of wonderful opportunities for miscommunication. Anytime, someone could ask you, oh, what piece of music are you going to sing at the satsang this morning? Why? And they'd say, well, I'm just curious. And no, that's the title of the song I'm going to sing. And I've already tricked my own brain a few times and others. And Asha and I have this ongoing joke that, and perhaps someday it won't be just a joke, that it would be very entertaining to create a skit or sort of like a mini operetta just using different lyrics and melodies of Swami Kriyananda's music, and how great and how many different scenes we could create just using the different words. And obviously this song would become very useful because we get the question, why? So we could have one character who just is constantly having an existential crisis, or is always just asking endless questions, and this would probably be a large part of their dialogue. But now, joking aside, this is a really wonderful, very, like I said, poignant piece of music. And there are some musical theory reasons behind why that might be, the scale that's used, some of the accidentals, some of the chording that is used. But honestly, I don't know enough to even talk about it. And secondly, I don't think I even need to. I think the music immediately expresses itself to anyone with ears to hear. So as we go into it this time, if you happen to know the song, please sing along with me. Because remember, this music is not just meant to be listened to, but it is meant to be sung. And that when we sing, we become an instrument. As Yogananda said, the instrument is blessed by that which flows through it. And it's actually very interesting, as just a little quick tangent. Some of the greatest instruments in the world, like the greatest cellos and violins that were made hundreds of years ago. One theory, I don't know that I've seen this really reinforced, but I've heard it talked about, as to why they play so well, is because instruments apparently improve with being played. That an instrument sweetens with time, but it doesn't sweeten if it's not played. And apparently it even is in relationship to the skill in which it's played, that the vibrations somehow soften and sweeten and deepen the tone that the wood is able to produce. And I find that just absolutely fascinating and wonderful to think about, that some of the greatest instruments of the world are that way, not just because of the quality with which they're made, but by the loving care that every one of those master musicians put into them. So an instrument that was made 250 years ago has been played by the greatest musicians of every generation until now it's in the hands of one of these great soloist performers of the world. What a lineage, what a total experience. But do you think that's limited just to an inert piece of wood? Don't you think your consciousness can become sweetened, can change, can develop, can grow, can enrich by the sound that you allow to flow through it? When you sing, your body becomes the resonating chamber. Your consciousness becomes what is affected. And just as this guitar will change with time as I play it, so your body, your consciousness, your heart will change as you sing this music. So don't just take this as an intellectual exercise, but let's take this as a transformational exercise of our vibration and of our very body, mind, and soul. So let's take a moment together and prepare ourselves. Interestingly, any instrument loses its ability to resonate when it holds excess tension. So let's relax the heartstrings of our own inner consciousness, holding our awareness with relaxed, uplifted effort at the spiritual eye, or no effort, but relaxed absorption. And let's allow ourselves to go into the experience of this piece of music and allow ourselves to be moved. Allow your heart to vibrate with the consciousness of this melody and to understand its deeper message. There lived a tender maid in a far-off country. The strangeness of this world made her sigh. Her friends asked their fathers for money and clothes, but all she could ask was, why? She saw the solemn clouds gathered watching a rainbow. The bright rays of their joys filled the sky. Her teachers explained it all wisely away, but still her heart wondered why. She saw the silent stars thrill the night with their gladness. They seemed some wondrous truth to imply. Her elders all slept while the magic of night awoke her to ponder She saw a mother smile as she tended her baby, a widow weep that love had to die. The joy of new friends and the sadness of parting All these made her ask God, why? One night into her heart stole the secret of oneness, a bond not even time can untie. For love then possessed her and made her his own. In love she at last learned why. And let's pause and feel what that music has awoken in your heart. And just hold on to this transformation, the journey that we've gone through with our protagonist. And I invite you to just remember what's happened to your heart. And that if you ever find yourself in a place of seeking answers, or feeling displaced, or even feeling alone, or wondering at the meaning of life, remember this song, and remember what has happened to your heart in these 3 minutes. Because this song answers why. When I was practicing and preparing for this song, I was talking with my friend Ramesha up at Ananda Village, who has dedicated his life to this music as well. And we were just enthusiastically sharing our love for Swamiji's music and for this song. And he said something that was so perfectly encapsulating of this song's vibration. And all I said was how much I loved the way Swamiji uses the poetry. It's just incredible use of poetry and words, that the end of every verse is her asking why. And one feels an increasing sense of deep yearning for an answer with every passing verse. And that word why holds this like tremor of desperation in it that only intensifies with every passing verse. And then suddenly at the end, he doesn't change the poetic pattern, but he simply changes what that word means. And Ramesha said it so perfectly when he said, that word becomes the answer and no longer the question. How thrilling, what an incredible use of poetry. And that's exactly what happens, that she's always asking at the end, why? Why? And then the final words are, in love she at last learned why. And from a musical perspective, this is absolute genius. And I think I'll be giddy about this until the day I die. Because like I've been talking about, I don't know so much about what different notes in a particular scale imply psychologically. There are people who would study their entire lives and have studied their entire lives and have written great tomes on this subject. So I'm just really a blundering plebeian when it comes to this sort of thing. But I know what it feels like, and so that's what I can share. But it's very interesting, as I've mentioned in other pieces of music we've examined so far, the tonic of a chord, which is like home base, the declaration of self from which all other notes pertain, is a very important note in any piece of music. And often in songs or pop songs, and especially pop songs, that tonic is really where the song usually begins, and it's usually where the song ends, and it's sort of everything in between is just a little adventure until we find our way back to that home. And it's really interesting that this song, the first note, "There lived," is actually not the tonic. It's sort of a little pickup into it. The second note is the tonic, but it already gives the sense a song of momentum or of searching or of a quest, right? But then the way every single verse ends, for example, the first, "But all she could ask was, why?" That word why falls on the tonic of the chord of the whole song. And so it really makes you feel that her whole identity is in this question, why? And that's part of what gives the song such a poignant feeling, is that it really makes you feel that this question never leaves her. That she sees her friends asking for money and clothes and worldly gifts. Even when she looks at the clouds, she doesn't escape this question. And how many of us run from pleasure to pleasure, from distraction to distraction, trying to escape this very question? And this song is saying you can never escape it. And at first, even on a human level, this becomes a little bit overwhelming, that the declaration of self is this question, why? 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 And that's what's asked every single time. And if someone had written this song who wasn't as spiritually mature and as realized as Swamiji, they may have written a very similar piece of music, but just imagine if the last verse did not have the divine realization that it does. This song could instead plunge you into deep despair. If it said, the last verse said, "And at last she realized there would never be an answer to her question, why?" then it would leave you with this sense of complete directionlessness. But that's exactly the opposite of what happens. That Swamiji takes us through every verse, and there's another brilliant progression that happens here. But at the end, we learn why. And that all of our heart's desires, all of our yearnings are satisfied in God. That's what this song is saying to us. What an incredible promise. Now let's take a closer look at some of the poetry and see if there's maybe even a little bit more that we can take into our daily lives. "There lived a tender maid." Already, I just have to pause right there. I love the use of the word tender, because there's many other words he could have used. He could have said, "There lived a beautiful maid." He could have said, "There lived a youthful maid." But he uses the word tender, because that immediately implies the tenderness of heart, the sweetness of the heart, and the sincerity. And so already, all of us can kind of relate to that, can't we? Regardless of our gender, that all of us feel from time to time, if not all the time, a tender vulnerability of heart which is asking this question. "There lived a tender maid in a far-off country. The strangeness of this world made her sigh. Her friends asked their fathers for money and clothes, but all she could ask was why." I mean, the poetry is so self-explanatory. I don't think I need to take too much time to go into those words. But interestingly, Ramesha also told me that apparently Swamiji mentioned that out of all the songs he's written, this is perhaps one of the most autobiographical, even though it's narrating a woman. And I'd never heard that one before. And so we're going to have to take that with a grain of salt, but it is an interesting progression. And I also noticed to my friends who are, pretty deep down the rabbit hole of examining Swamiji's work, this song is very similar in its vibration and in its progression to his writing The Land of Golden Sunshine. And that I have heard him say is the most autobiographical piece of work that he's written in literature. And so in a sense, even if Ramesha's comment isn't literally true, it's similar in its bhav and in the story it tells, which is interesting to consider. Now, one thing that I want to highlight here is the progression of who she's asking for answers and how she's asking for answers. Because in the first verse, our protagonist, who I think we could all just say represents the human heart, is asking the people in her lives, her father. She's asking her friends asked their fathers for money and clothes, but all she could ask was why. And that means she's asking the people in her life, why? Why does this world exist? And when that doesn't work, then the next thing is she's watching the beauty of nature. She's watching the solemn clouds, watching a rainbow. And her teachers explained it all wisely away. But still her heart wondered, why? And that's a beautiful progression, because her teachers are explaining it just with using perceivable sciences and things like that, and yet her heart is wondering, but surely there must be a deeper message here. So first she asked, then her heart wondered. And then in the third verse, when it says she saw the silent stars thrill the night with their gladness, they seemed some wondrous truth to imply. Her elders all slept, but the magic of light awoke her to ponder why. And so she's deepening that question. Her heart wondered, and now she's waking and she's pondering and she's considering the magic of light, which is such a beautiful turn of poetic phrase. That verse is perhaps my favorite in the poetry of it. It's just so inspiring to me, because I too look at the stars and they thrill the night with their gladness. He just so perfectly encapsulates what it's like to do that, didn't he? Then the fourth verse, she saw a mother smile as she tended her baby, a widow weep that love had to die. And now we're witnessing the joys and sorrows of all human relationships, the joy of new friends and the sadness of parting. All these made her ask God, why? And so we can see now she's asking the right person. She's asking the right question. She's asking in the right way. And this is how we come to our answer. One night, into her heart stole the secret of oneness, a bond not even time can untie. For love, and he capitalizes love here, meaning it's the consciousness of God himself. For love then possessed her and made her his own. In love she at last learned why. What an incredible journey, isn't it? This would be well worth all of us just looking at the words. I find with myself, because of having grown up singing this music, sometimes when we sing a piece of music, we don't relate to the poetry as just poetry, relate to it as a piece of music. What I mean by that is I sing the notes, and really I'm singing notes that just happen to be words, but I don't really hear what the words are saying. It's very useful from time to time to simply read them or to say them, to really let them sink in, allow them to influence us, and then put it back together with the music and see how that can take it deeper. So we're doing it very consciously rather than just reflexively. So now let's take a listen to the melody, which is such a beautiful, haunting, and poignant melody that utilizes some very interesting elements to bring out the yearning of the heart. And so let's take a listen and see what it does to us. Some haunting phrases, aren't there? Now let's put them together. And I invite you to sing along with me again if you know the lyrics, or just to allow them to vibrate, to resonate deeply in your own heart. Both the melody and this incredible poetry. There lived a tender maid in a far-off country. The strangeness of this world made her sigh. Her friends asked their fathers for money and clothes, but all she could ask was why. She saw the solemn clouds thrill the one gathered watching a rainbow. The bright rays of their joys thrilled the sky. Her teachers explained it all wisely away, but still her heart wondered why. She saw the silent stars thrill the night with their gladness. They seemed some wondrous truth to imply. Her elders all slept while the magic of light awoke her to ponder why. She saw a mother smile as she tended her baby, a widow weep that love had to die. The joy of new friends and the sadness of parting, all these made her ask God why. One night into her heart stole the secret of oneness, a bond not even time can untie. For love then possessed her and made her his own. In love she at last learned why. Let's all try to live in the vibration of this song, so we too may all in love at last learn why.